She stood before society, head held high despite the whispers. The Duke of Ashford had painted her a villain, his vengeance swift and merciless. Her reputation lay in ruins, her name synonymous with betrayal. But beneath the scandal, a truth burned, one that would shatter his certainty and bring the proudest man in England to his knees. She had sacrificed everything for the one person who meant nothing to her, and everything to him. If you're listening to this story, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which part of the world you're listening from. I want to know how far it has travelled. The year was 1815, and the drawing rooms of London's aristocracy buzzed with anticipation. Among the gilded halls and pristine gardens of Mayfair, Lady Diana Thornbury moved with practiced grace, her every step measured, her every smile calculated. At 22, she was the jewel of the season. Raven hair that cascaded in elegant waves, eyes the colour of stormy seas, and a sharp intelligence that she'd learned to hide beneath layers of feminine propriety. Diana's world was one of silk gowns and morning calls, of strategic alliances and whispered expectations. Her father, the Earl of Thornbury, had made his intentions clear since she was a child. She would marry well, secure the family's position, and fulfill her duty. There was no room for dreams in the Thornbury household, only obligations wrapped in the facade of privilege. The object of these carefully laid plans was Lord Edmund Ashford, younger brother to the Duke of Ashford. Edmund was everything society valued, handsome in a soft, poetic way, charming without being dangerous, wealthy enough to be desirable but not so powerful as to be intimidating. He had fair hair that caught the sunlight, gentle blue eyes, and a laugh that seemed to invite confidences. Diana had met Edmund at a garden party in May, where he'd recited Wordsworth while they walked among the roses. He spoke of beauty and nature, of art and feeling, and for a moment Diana allowed herself to imagine a life where conversation might replace the cold silence she'd grown accustomed to at home. He was kind, attentive, and most importantly, he made her father smile with approval. But there was another Ashford brother, one who cast a far longer shadow. Benedict Ashford, the Duke of Ashford, was a man carved from different marble entirely. At 30 years old, he commanded every room he entered. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair, and eyes that seemed to see through pretense and polish, straight to the truth beneath. Where Edmund was soft curves and gentle smiles, Benedict was all sharp angles and penetrating stares. He had returned from the continent only months before, his reputation preceding him like thunder before a storm. The Duke, Diana learned, did not attend garden parties. He did not recite poetry or discuss the merits of landscape paintings. He managed vast estates, sat in Parliament, and carried the weight of one of England's oldest titles with an intensity that made others seem to be playing at life, while he lived it with fierce purpose. Diana first saw him at a ball in June, standing at the edge of the ballroom like a dark sentinel. While others danced and laughed, Benedict watched with an expression that suggested he found the entire affair vaguely tiresome. His presence was magnetic, despite his obvious disinterest, and Diana found her attention drawn to him, even as Edmund claimed her for a waltz. "My brother doesn't approve," Edmund had whispered, as they turned across the floor, following Diana's gaze. "He thinks I should focus on more serious pursuits. But what could be more serious than finding a partner for life?" Diana smiled, offering the expected response, but she couldn't shake the feeling of Benedict's eyes on her, assessing, weighing, and finding her somehow wanting. The courtship progressed with mechanical precision. Edmund called at appropriate hours, brought flowers that Diana's mother cooed over, and spoke of a future filled with art exhibitions and literary salons. Diana played her part, the perfect prospective bride, while her father negotiated settlements and her mother planned guest lists. It was during a family dinner at the Ashford London residence that Diana first spoke directly to the Duke. The evening was meant to formalize the engagement plans, with both families present to discuss arrangements. Diana sat across from Edmund, who beamed at her with genuine affection, while Benedict occupied the head of the table, his presence dominating despite his relative silence. "Lady Diana," Benedict's voice cut through the dinner conversation like a blade, "my brother tells me you share his passion for poetry. Tell me, do you also share his disdain for practical matters?" The table fell silent. Edmund flushed, while Diana's father shifted uncomfortably. But Diana met Benedict's challenging gaze directly. "I find, Your Grace, that practicality and poetry need not be mutually exclusive. The most beautiful verse often contains profound truths about the human condition. Is that not practical knowledge?" Something flickered in Benedict's dark eyes, surprise perhaps, or reassessment. "A diplomatic answer, Lady Diana. My brother has chosen well, it seems." But the words felt like criticism wrapped in compliment, and Diana sensed the Duke's disapproval radiating across the table like cold fog. The engagement was announced in July, to general acclaim and celebration. Diana became Lady Diana Thornbury, betrothed to Lord Edmund Ashford, and her future seemed as fixed as the stars. Wedding plans commenced with her mother's enthusiastic direction, a September ceremony, St. George's in Hanover Square, a reception at the Ashford country estate in Hampshire. Yet as summer progressed, Diana noticed cracks in Edmund's cheerful facade. He grew distracted during their calls, his poetry recitations trailing off mid-verse. Dark circles appeared beneath his eyes, and his hands sometimes trembled when he thought she wasn't looking. When Diana inquired, Edmund assured her all was well, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. It was Benedict who appeared at the Thornbury residence one August afternoon, unannounced and alone. Diana's mother nearly fainted at the honor of receiving a duke in their drawing room, but Benedict's expression suggested this was no social call. "I wish to speak with Lady Diana," he stated, his tone brooking no argument. "Privately, if her mother will permit it. The matter concerns my brother." Diana's heart raced as her mother reluctantly withdrew, leaving the door pointedly ajar for propriety's sake. Benedict stood by the window, his back to her, tension evident in every line of his powerful frame. "Your Grace?" Diana prompted, her voice steady despite her anxiety. Benedict turned, and Diana was struck by the barely contained fury in his expression. "My brother is in trouble, Lady Diana. Serious trouble. And I suspect you know more about it than you've let on." "I don't understand. Edmund has been keeping secrets, dangerous secrets, and I will not allow him to drag this family into scandal simply because he lacks the spine to face his responsibilities." Diana felt ice spread through her chest. "What secrets? Edmund has told me nothing of any trouble." Benedict studied her with those penetrating eyes, as if trying to determine truth from performance. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you're a better actress than I credited. Either way, this engagement will proceed as planned, and you will help me ensure my brother doesn't destroy everything our family has built. Do I make myself clear?" It was not a request but a command, delivered with the absolute authority of a man accustomed to obedience. Diana nodded mutely, and Benedict left as abruptly as he'd arrived, leaving her shaken and full of questions that Edmund refused to answer. The weeks that followed brought a growing sense of dread. Edmund became increasingly evasive, cancelling calls and arriving late to planned outings with wild excuses. Benedict's presence became more prominent, appearing at events Diana attended with Edmund, watching them with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. And then, 1 week before the wedding, Edmund came to her in the dead of night. The pebbles struck Diana's window just past midnight, pulling her from restless sleep. She rose, wrapping a shawl around her nightdress, and peered into the darkness of the garden below. Edmund stood among the rose bushes, his face pale in the moonlight, desperation etched in every feature. Diana's heart hammered as she descended the servants' stairs and slipped through the garden door, propriety abandoned in the face of Edmund's obvious distress. Up close, he looked utterly destroyed, clothing disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, hands shaking violently. "Edmund, what's happened?" Diana whispered urgently, leading him deeper into the shadows. "I've ruined everything," he choked out, his voice breaking. "Diana, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this. I thought I could handle it, thought I could fix it before anyone knew, but it's all fallen apart. Tell me, whatever it is, we'll find a way." "I've been gambling," Edmund confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Not just card games at the club, but serious gambling, deep play. I owed men who don't forgive debts, Diana, dangerous men. And when I couldn't pay, they offered me a way out. They wanted information about Benedict's business dealings, his investments, said they'd clear my debts entirely." Diana felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "Edmund, you didn't." "I did." His voice was hollow now, defeated. "I gave them documents from Benedict's study, details about ventures he's planning, contracts he's negotiating. I didn't think it would matter, but now there are rumors, accusations that Benedict is engaged in illegal dealings. The documents I provided have been altered, falsified, and submitted to Parliament. They're calling for an investigation. Benedict could lose everything. His seat, his reputation, possibly even the title if they find proof of corruption." Horror flooded through Diana. "But he's innocent. The documents were forged. Who will believe that?" Edmund laughed bitterly. "I'm his brother. I had access. And if Benedict discovers what I've done, it won't just destroy him, it'll destroy our entire family. Our sisters will never marry well. Our mother will be shunned. Everything father built will crumble." "Then we tell the truth," Diana insisted, though her voice wavered. "We go to Benedict, explain what happened." "He'll never forgive me," Edmund said, and Diana realized he was weeping. "Benedict has always been the perfect son, the perfect duke. He's carried this family on his shoulders since he was 21, and I've always been the disappointment, the weak one. This will prove everything he's ever thought about me. I can't face him, Diana. I can't." "Then what do you propose?" Diana asked, though dread was already forming in her stomach. Edmund grasped her hands, his grip painfully tight. "Run away with me. Tonight. We'll go to Scotland, marry there, start over somewhere he can't find us. If I disappear, the scandal will die. They'll have no one to testify, no one to confirm the documents came from our family. Benedict will be able to fight the accusations without the complication of my involvement." "Edmund, running won't solve anything. It's the only way." His desperation had turned frantic. "Please, Diana, if you ever cared for me at all, if our engagement meant anything, come with me. I can't do this alone. I can't face what I've done." Diana looked at the man she was meant to marry in 6 days and saw clearly for the first time. Edmund wasn't evil, but he was weak. He had made terrible choices, and now he wanted her to abandon everything to help him escape the consequences. But even as she opened her mouth to refuse, a thought struck her with terrible clarity. If Edmund disappeared alone, Benedict would hunt him down. The Duke was relentless, thorough, and he loved his family despite his harsh exterior. He would find Edmund eventually, and then everything would unravel anyway. But if Edmund had a reason to leave, a scandal that overshadowed his other crimes— "I'll help you," Diana heard herself say, the words feeling like they came from someone else, "but not the way you think." She spent the rest of that night and the following day in careful planning, her mind working through scenarios and consequences with mechanical precision. What she was about to do would destroy her reputation, end any chance of a respectable marriage, and likely estrange her from her family. But it might, just might, save Edmund from his own weakness and protect Benedict from a scandal that could ruin him. The pre-wedding ball was held at the Ashford London residence 2 days before the ceremony. Every important family in London society attended, eager to celebrate the union of the Thornbury and Ashford names. Diana wore white silk, embroidered with silver thread, looking every inch the radiant bride-to-be. Edmund stood beside her in the receiving line, his smile fixed and hollow, while Benedict moved through the crowd with his usual commanding presence. Diana waited until the ball was at its height, until the ballroom was packed with London's elite, until the musicians struck up the waltz that Edmund was meant to lead her in, the ceremonial dance of the engaged couple. Then she stepped into the center of the ballroom and raised her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I must beg your attention for a moment. There is something I must confess before this marriage proceeds any further." The music died. Conversation ceased. Every eye in the room fixed on Diana, standing alone in her white gown like a condemned angel. Edmund's face drained of color. "Diana, no!" But Diana continued, her voice clear and unwavering. "I cannot in good conscience marry Lord Edmund Ashford because I have betrayed his trust in the most unforgivable way. I have given my heart and my virtue to another." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Diana's mother swayed, caught by her father. But Diana kept her eyes on Benedict, who had gone absolutely still, his expression unreadable. "For months I have been conducting an affair behind Lord Edmund's back, lying to him and to all of you. I'm not worthy of the honor he has shown me, and I release him from our engagement with my deepest apologies and shame." The ballroom erupted in scandalized whispers. Edmund stared at her with horror and confusion, clearly not understanding what she was doing. But Diana saw the exact moment she needed to see, the moment when Benedict's expression shifted from shock to cold, calculated fury. He thought she was telling the truth. He believed she had betrayed his brother. "Who?" Benedict's voice cut through the chaos like a whip. He moved toward her with predatory grace, every line of his body radiating dangerous anger. "Who is this man you claim to have sullied yourself with?" Diana lifted her chin, meeting his furious gaze. "A gentleman whose name I will not speak, to spare his reputation what little mercy I can. But rest assured, Your Grace, the fault is entirely mine. I pursued him, I initiated the affair, and I have deceived everyone who trusted me. It was the perfect scandal. The fallen woman, the betrayed fiancé, the destroyed engagement just days before the wedding. Every detail calculated to direct all blame, all fury, all attention onto Diana herself." Benedict reached her, stopping close enough that she could see the rage burning in his dark eyes. "You confess this publicly, expecting what? Sympathy? Understanding?" "I expect nothing but what I deserve," Diana said quietly. "I only ask that Edmund be spared any further connection to me. Let the shame be mine alone." "Oh, it will be," Benedict promised, his voice low and deadly. "You have humiliated my brother, made a mockery of our family, and proven yourself to be exactly the kind of scheming, manipulative creature I suspected from the first. You will leave this house immediately, and you will never speak to anyone in my family again. I will ensure every door in London, in all of England, is closed to you. No respectable house will receive you. No decent man will offer for you. You will spend the rest of your days living with the consequences of your moral bankruptcy." Each word landed like a physical blow, but Diana accepted them, welcomed them. This was the price of Edmund's protection, of keeping Benedict's name clear of the scandal Edmund had created. "Your Grace is more than fair," Diana whispered. "Fair?" Benedict's laugh was bitter. "I am justice itself, Lady Diana, and you will discover that my justice is thorough, unrelenting and absolute. Now get out of my sight before I say something even your shameless nature cannot withstand." Diana turned to Edmund one last time. His face was a mask of confusion and guilt, but she shook her head minutely, trying to convey a message with her eyes. "Run. While they're focused on me, run. Disappear and start over. This is your chance." Then she walked through the silent ballroom, through the crowd that parted before her like she carried plague, through the doors and into the night. Behind her, she heard Benedict's voice, cold and authoritative, dismissing the guests and ending the catastrophe of an evening. Diana climbed into her father's carriage alone. Her parents would not ride with her, would not even look at her, and let the numbness finally wash over her. She had destroyed herself tonight, sacrificed everything she'd been raised to value. But Edmund would have his chance to escape, and Benedict, Benedict would never know that the woman he now despised had saved him from a betrayal far worse than a broken engagement. The Duke had destroyed her with his words and his wrath, and she had let him, bearing it all in silence. The morning after the ball, Diana's father spoke to her for the first and last time. He stood in the doorway of her room, his face aged overnight by shame and fury, and delivered his judgment with cold finality. "You will leave London today. Your Aunt Cordelia in Bath has agreed to take you in, though God knows why she shows you more charity than you deserve. You are no longer welcome in this house or in this family. If you have any decency left, you will live quietly and never again bring the Thornbury name into public notice." Within hours, Diana was on a coach heading west, carrying only a small trunk and the weight of London's condemnation. The other passengers whispered and moved away when they learned her name. The scandal had spread that quickly, carried on the wings of shocked gossip from ballroom to breakfast room throughout the city. Bath, when Diana finally arrived 3 days later, felt like a different world. The ancient spa town had a faded elegance, a genteel weariness that suited Diana's state perfectly. Aunt Cordelia met her at the coaching inn with kind eyes and no questions, simply gathering Diana into her carriage and bringing her to a modest but charming townhouse on a quiet street. Cordelia Blackwood was her father's elder sister, a widow of 15 years, who had retreated to Bath after her husband's death and built a life outside society's strictest expectations. At 62, she had silver hair she wore without pretension, intelligent hazel eyes that seemed to see everything, and a spine of pure steel hidden beneath her gentle manners. "You'll stay as long as you need," Cordelia told Diana that first evening, pouring tea in her cozy sitting room. "I don't need to know the details of what happened in London. What I do know is that a young woman doesn't destroy herself publicly without reason, and I suspect your reason was worth the cost, even if no one else will ever know it." Diana broke then, the tears she'd held back for days finally falling as Cordelia held her and let her weep. The first weeks in Bath were a fog of grief and numbness. Diana barely left the house, spending her days in Cordelia's library, losing herself in books and trying not to think about Edmund or Benedict or the life she'd sacrificed. Letters arrived regularly from London, vicious notes from former friends, her mother's cold missive formally severing ties, and worst of all, the society pages detailing the ongoing scandal and speculation about Diana's mysterious lover. But there were no letters from Edmund. Diana took that as a good sign. He must have taken her desperate gift and fled, started over somewhere Benedict couldn't find him. At least something had worked as she'd hoped. It was Cordelia who finally pulled Diana from her self-imposed isolation. One morning in October, she appeared in Diana's room with a determined expression and a stack of pamphlets. "Enough," Cordelia declared. "You've mourned long enough. Now it's time to live." The pamphlets advertised lectures at the Bath Literary and Scientific Institution, discussions of geology, astronomy, history, and philosophy. Subjects Diana had always been curious about but never permitted to study seriously, as they were deemed inappropriate for young ladies, meant only to ornament drawing rooms. "We're going," Cordelia announced. "Tonight, there's a lecture on recent archaeological discoveries in Greece. You'll come with me, you'll listen, and you'll remember that you have a mind worth more than any reputation London society could grant or take away." Diana wanted to refuse, to stay hidden, but something in Cordelia's fierce expression made her reconsider. Perhaps her aunt was right. Perhaps there was more to life than the narrow path she'd been raised to walk. That evening, Diana entered the institution's lecture hall with her heart racing, expecting stares and whispers. But Bath's attendees were different from London's ballroom crowds. Here were scholars and artists, blue-stockings and retired military officers, people genuinely interested in ideas rather than gossip. A few curious glances came Diana's way, but most were focused on the speaker. A weathered man just returned from Athens with fragments of pottery and passionate theories about ancient civilization. Diana found herself leaning forward, captivated. The speaker discussed archaeological methods, historical context, the ways physical evidence could illuminate the past. It was fascinating, intellectually rigorous, and utterly unlike any conversation she'd been permitted in her former life. After the lecture, Cordelia introduced Diana to several of her Bath acquaintances. There was Mrs. Philippa Hartley, a widow who'd published 3 novels under a male pseudonym, Mr. Lawrence Whitmore, a former military surgeon who now studied medicine and advocated for hospital reform, and Miss Eleanor Finch, a sharp-tongued woman of 30 who'd inherited her father's bookshop and expanded it into one of Bath's most respected establishments. "Lady Diana," Eleanor said, studying her with open curiosity, "I've heard the London gossip, of course, but Cordelia vouches for you, which means you're worth knowing regardless of what society's fools have to say. Tell me, have you read Mary Wollstonecraft?" The question was unexpected, almost aggressive in its directness, but Diana found herself answering honestly. "Only fragments in secret. My mother believed such works would corrupt my mind." Eleanor's smile was fierce. "Well, now your mind is your own. Come to the shop tomorrow. I'll remedy your education properly." Over the following weeks, Diana found herself drawn into Cordelia's circle of intellectuals and reformers. They met regularly, at the pump room for morning conversation, at the institution for lectures, at Eleanor's bookshop for reading discussions that stretched late into the evening. Diana read philosophy and poetry, political theory, and scientific treatises. She attended debates on slavery abolition, women's education, and prison reform. It was at one such gathering in early November that Diana met Dr. Benjamin Carlyle. The lecture that evening concerned the treatment of fever, and the speaker was a young physician just returned from Edinburgh with new ideas about hygiene and disease prevention. Diana attended with Mrs. Hartley, expecting another interesting but impersonal evening of learning. Instead, she found herself utterly absorbed by the speaker. Dr. Carlyle was perhaps 30 years old, with auburn hair that refused to stay properly combed, warm brown eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, and an enthusiasm for his subject that made even discussions of sanitation practices compelling. He spoke with passion about the needless deaths he'd witnessed, the lives that could be saved with better knowledge and practices, the duty of medicine to serve all people regardless of wealth or station. After the lecture, Mrs. Hartley drew Diana forward to be introduced. "Dr. Carlyle, allow me to present Lady Diana Thornbury, recently come to Bath. She's been following the medical reform discussions with great interest." Dr. Carlyle's smile was open and genuine, with no hint of recognition or judgment. "Lady Diana, a pleasure. Have you a background in medical studies?" "None whatsoever," Diana admitted, "but I'm endeavoring to remedy my educational deficiencies in many areas. Your lecture was remarkable. You're very kind, though I must confess, speaking to those already sympathetic to reform is far easier than convincing the medical college establishment. Progress comes slowly in medicine, hampered by tradition and pride. Perhaps what's needed is not just convincing the establishment," Diana found herself saying, "but demonstrating success they cannot ignore. Results speak louder than arguments." Dr. Carlyle's eyes lit up with interest. "Precisely so. That's exactly the approach I'm attempting at the charity hospital here in Bath. Small scale, careful documentation, and hopefully undeniable outcomes. Though I must say, it's refreshing to hear such practical thinking from someone outside the profession." They talked for nearly an hour about medical reform, yes, but also about Edinburgh, about Bath, about the challenges of convincing people to change long-held beliefs. Dr. Carlyle was easy to talk to, treating Diana as an intellectual equal rather than a decorative ornament or fallen woman. He asked her opinions and listened to her answers, building on her ideas rather than dismissing them. When Cordelia finally signaled it was time to leave, Dr. Carlyle bowed over Diana's hand with genuine warmth. "I hope we'll meet again, Lady Diana. Fresh perspectives are invaluable in my work." Walking home through Bath's lamplit streets, Cordelia gave Diana a knowing look. Dr. Carlyle is highly respected here. Son of a country vicar, made his own way through university on scholarships and determination. He's been offered positions in London but refuses them. Says he'd rather serve Bath's poor than London's rich. He seems very dedicated to his principles, Diana said carefully, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest. He is, and he's looking for a wife, someone who can help him with his work, who shares his passion for reform and service. Not the typical society arrangement at all. Diana's heart constricted. I'm hardly in a position to consider marriage, Aunt. No respectable man would have me after what happened in London. Dr. Carlyle isn't London society, Cordelia pointed out gently. And he's not the type to care about gossip. But I'm not pushing, dear. I only want you to know that your life isn't over. Different doors have opened, even as others closed. Over the following weeks, Diana saw Dr. Carlyle regularly at lectures and gatherings. Their conversations deepened, ranging from medicine to philosophy to shared frustrations with society's rigid structures. Benjamin, as he insisted she call him, told her about his childhood in a small Devonshire village, about watching his mother die from childbed fever that proper hygiene might have prevented, about his determination to change medicine from within. Diana found herself sharing more than she'd intended, about the intellectual starvation of her London life, about the books she'd read in secret, about dreams she'd never spoken aloud. She didn't tell him about Edmund or Benedict, or the real reason for her scandal, but she spoke honestly about everything else. "You have a remarkable mind," Benjamin told her one evening after a particularly spirited debate about educational reform. "It's criminal that you were never allowed proper schooling. You'd have made an excellent scholar." "Women aren't permitted to be scholars," Diana said with a bitter smile. "We're meant to be ornamental and obedient." "Then the system is flawed and deserves to be challenged," Benjamin replied firmly. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made Diana's breath catch. "You deserve better than the life you were offered, Lady Diana. You deserve to use that intellect, to pursue knowledge, to matter in ways beyond the marriage market." It was the most radical thing anyone had ever said to her, and Diana felt something shift in her chest, a door opening onto possibilities she'd never imagined. But even as Bath offered new life and new hope, London's shadow remained. In December, Cordelia received a letter from an old friend detailing the latest society news. Diana read it with growing dread. The investigation into Benedict Ashford had been dropped for lack of evidence. The Duke's reputation remained intact, though rumour suggested it had been a near thing. And Edmund had vanished completely. No one had seen him since the night of Diana's scandal, and speculation ran rampant about where he'd gone and why. "He made it," Diana whispered, relief flooding through her. "He escaped." But the letter contained one more piece of information that made Diana's blood run cold. Benedict Ashford had been asking questions about her. About the unnamed man she'd claimed as her lover. About the truth of what had happened that night. The Duke, it seemed, wasn't finished with her after all. The Christmas season in Bath was a quieter affair than London's grand celebrations, but it held a warmth Diana had never experienced in her former life. Cordelia's townhouse filled with friends sharing mulled wine and intellectual conversation, rather than rigid social performance. Diana found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in months, surrounded by people who valued her mind over her scandal. Benjamin Carlyle became a regular presence, often appearing with medical journals to discuss or questions about a reform proposal he was drafting. His attentions were clear but respectful, never presumptuous. Diana found herself watching for him at gatherings, her heart lifting when he arrived. On Christmas Eve, Benjamin walked Diana home from the pump room after a carol concert. Snow was falling softly, turning Bath's honey-coloured stone into something from a fairy tale. At Cordelia's door, Benjamin paused, his expression unusually serious. "Diana," he began, then stopped, gathering courage. "I realize this is perhaps too soon, and my circumstances are far from what you were raised to expect. But I must speak honestly. These past months, knowing you have been the most intellectually fulfilling of my life, you challenge me, inspire me, and make me want to be better at my work. I wonder if, that is, I hope you might consider. Diana's heart hammered. She knew what he was trying to ask, and part of her wanted desperately to say yes. But honesty demanded she stop him. Benjamin, there's something you should know about my scandal. The truth is not what was reported. I don't care, Benjamin interrupted gently. Whatever happened in London, whoever you were then, I know who you are now. That's what matters to me. But my reputation will never be restored in London society. I understand that. But Bath isn't London, and I'm not a duke or earl who needs a pristine bride. I'm a doctor with a calling to serve, and I need a partner who shares that calling. Someone intelligent, compassionate, and brave enough to live outside society's narrow expectations. That's you, Diana. Tears pricked Diana's eyes. It was everything she'd never dared hope for: acceptance, respect, a future built on shared values rather than family negotiations. But before she could respond, Cordelia's door flew open. "Diana!" Cordelia's face was pale, a letter clutched in her hand. "The Duke of Ashford is here in Bath. He arrived this afternoon and is demanding to see you." All the warmth drained from the evening. Diana's past had finally caught up with her present. Benedict appeared the next morning, his arrival announced by a card delivered with ducal authority that brooked no refusal. He wished to call on Lady Diana at 2 o'clock to discuss a matter of urgent family business. The fact that he considered Diana family business, despite their severed connection, sent ice through her veins. Diana dressed carefully, a simple grey gown, her hair in a modest style. She would not give Benedict the satisfaction of seeing her cowed or desperate to impress. When he arrived precisely at 2, the sight of him stole Diana's breath, despite her preparation. Benedict Ashford in London ballrooms had been formidable. Benedict Ashford in Cordelia's modest sitting room, his dark eyes blazing with cold fury barely held in check, was terrifying. "Lady Diana," he said, his voice clipped, "I trust you know why I'm here." "I cannot imagine," Diana replied, keeping her voice steady. "Don't play games with me." Benedict moved closer, his tall frame seeming to fill the space. "I've spent 3 months investigating your scandal, and I've discovered something very interesting. No one, not one person in London society, can identify the man you claim to have your affair with. No rumours preceded your announcement, no servants gossiped, no one saw you with anyone suspicious." Diana's mouth went dry. She'd never considered Benedict would investigate so thoroughly. "Perhaps my discretion was more effective than anticipated," she tried, but Benedict cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Discretion or fiction?" His eyes pinned her in place. "I think you lied that night. I think there was no affair, no betrayal of Edmund except the one you manufactured. The question that has consumed me these past months is why? Why would you destroy yourself so completely unless you were protecting something or someone?" Diana's heart raced. Benedict was too clever, too relentless. If he kept pushing, he'd uncover the truth about Edmund. "Your Grace, I assure you—" "My brother vanished the same night as your scandal," Benedict continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Edmund, who had been acting strangely for months, who had debts he couldn't pay and desperation he thought he'd hidden. Edmund, who disappeared without a trace while you drew every eye in London to your supposed sins." "I don't know where Edmund is," Diana said truthfully. "I haven't seen or heard from him since that night." "But you know why he left," Benedict pressed. "You know what he was running from, and you sacrificed yourself to give him that chance." The accusation hung in the air between them. Diana could see the pieces clicking together in Benedict's brilliant, ruthless mind. She had to stop this, had to redirect his fury away from Edmund before it was too late. "What if I did?" Diana lifted her chin, meeting Benedict's gaze directly. "What if everything you suspect is true? Your brother is gone, you're safe from whatever scandal he brought, and I've paid the price. What does it matter now?" "It matters," Benedict said, his voice rough with an emotion Diana couldn't identify. Because I destroyed an innocent woman. I used my power and influence to ensure your complete ruin in society. I made you untouchable, unmarriageable, a social pariah. And if you were protecting Edmund from his own cowardice, then everything I did to you was exactly what I intended, Diana finished. I made my choice, Your Grace. I don't regret it. What did Edmund do? Benedict demanded. What was he running from? I cannot tell you that. It was his secret to share or keep. Benedict's jaw clenched, fury and frustration warring in his expression. Do you have any idea what you've done to yourself? Your family has disowned you. Your reputation is destroyed. No respectable man will— I'm aware of the consequences, Diana interrupted. I lived them every day since that night. Then let me fix it. The words burst from Benedict with unexpected force. If you were innocent, if you sacrificed yourself for Edmund's sake, then I have a duty to restore what I destroyed. I'll tell London the truth. I'll explain that you were coerced, threatened, protecting someone. I'll use every ounce of my influence to rebuild your reputation. No, Diana's voice was firm. You'll do no such thing. Diana, Lady Diana, she corrected coolly. And I mean it, Your Grace. What's done is done. I have no wish to return to London society or the life I left behind. You may believe I was innocent if it soothes your conscience, but I neither want nor need your attempts at redemption. That's pride talking, Benedict said, frustration evident. You're punishing yourself and me for something Edmund did. I'm living the life I chose, Diana corrected, and it may surprise you to learn that it's a better life than the one I had in London. I've spent these months learning, growing, becoming something more than an ornament for a ballroom. I have friends who value my mind. I have purpose beyond making advantageous marriage. I'm not a victim, Your Grace. I'm free. Benedict stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You can't mean that. Every word. Diana moved toward the door, signaling the interview's end. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a prior engagement at the literary institution. Dr. Carlyle is presenting on surgical advances, and I promise to attend. Dr. Carlyle? Benedict's tone sharpened. Who is Dr. Carlyle? A friend and colleague of my aunt's, a brilliant physician and reformer. Not that it's any concern of yours. Everything about you is my concern, Benedict said, and something in his voice made Diana's breath catch. I ruined you, Diana. That makes you my responsibility. I'm no one's responsibility but my own, Diana replied firmly. Goodbye, Your Grace. Please give my regards to your mother and sisters. She left Benedict standing in Cordelia's sitting room, her composure intact until she reached her bedroom. Only then did she allow herself to shake, to process the danger of how close Benedict had come to the truth. But Benedict wasn't finished. Over the following days, he became an inescapable presence in Bath. He attended the literary institution's lectures, appearing suddenly in audiences Diana had thought safely obscure. He took subscriptions at the pump room, where he watched her morning conversations with calculating intensity. He even appeared at Eleanor's bookshop, examining volumes with no apparent interest, while Diana tried to ignore him. It was at one such lecture, on prison reform, that Benjamin Carlyle first encountered the Duke of Ashford. Diana saw the moment Benjamin noticed Benedict's fixed attention on her, saw the doctor's expression shift from curiosity to protective concern. After the lecture, Benjamin approached directly, his usual gentle demeanor replaced by something firmer. Your Grace, Benjamin said, his tone respectful but not deferential. Dr. Benjamin Carlyle, I wonder if I might speak with you regarding your intentions toward Lady Diana. Benedict's eyebrows rose. My intentions. I wasn't aware I needed to explain myself to you, Dr. Carlyle. Perhaps not. But Lady Diana has become dear to many of us here in Bath, and we're protective of her well-being. If your presence is meant to cause her distress or drag her back into the scandal you created— You know about London? Benedict interrupted. I know enough, and I know Diana deserves peace and respect. not to be hounded by those who wronged her. For a long moment the two men faced each other, the Duke, all aristocratic authority and barely contained intensity, and the doctor, calm, principled, and utterly unintimidated by rank. "Your concern for Lady Diana is noted," Benedict said finally. "But my business with her is my own. Your business ended when you destroyed her reputation and drove her from London," Benjamin replied evenly. "Whatever guilt you're attempting to assuage, do it without disturbing her new life. She's building something here, something good and meaningful. Don't take that from her too." Benedict's expression shifted, something that might have been pain flashing across his features. "You care for her." "I respect her," Benjamin corrected. "I value her mind and her character. And yes, I care for her well-being, which is why I'm asking you, as one gentleman to another, to consider what's best for Diana rather than what might ease your own conscience." Diana watched this exchange from across the room, her heart in her throat. She'd never seen anyone stand up to Benedict so directly, treating him as an equal rather than a superior, and she'd never seen Benedict look quite so uncertain. That evening, Benedict appeared at Cordelia's door one final time. But this visit was different, his fury banked, his expression almost vulnerable. "May I speak with you?" he asked Diana quietly. "Not as a duke demanding answers, but as a man who owes you an apology he can never adequately give." Diana led him to Cordelia's small garden, now bare in winter but offering privacy. Benedict stood silent for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "I've been investigating Edmund's debts and the people he owed. I know what he did, Diana. I know about the documents he stole, the information he sold, the scandal he nearly brought down on our family. And I know you discovered it somehow, and you sacrificed yourself to give him the chance to escape." Diana said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. "You saved us," Benedict continued. "You saved my family's reputation, our title, everything. And I called you manipulative and scheming. I promised to destroy you, and I did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now, and that I'm sorry." "Thank you," Diana said softly. "Your apology is accepted." "Dr. Carlyle is a good man," Benedict added after a pause. "Honorable, the type who would value you as you deserve. You should accept him if he offers." "I'll make my own decisions about my future," Diana replied, but there was no heat in it. Benedict nodded, turning to leave. But at the garden gate he paused. "For what it's worth, Diana, I wish I'd known you as you really are from the beginning. Before the scandal, before Edmund's betrayal, before everything went wrong, I think I would have found you remarkable." Then he was gone, disappearing into Bath's evening streets, leaving Diana alone with the echo of words that sounded disturbingly like regret. Benedict left Bath the next morning without another word, and Diana told herself the hollow feeling in her chest was relief, not loss. She threw herself back into Bath's intellectual life with renewed determination, attending lectures, reading voraciously, and helping Eleanor organize a reading series featuring female authors. Benjamin continued his attentions with patient consistency. He never pushed, never demanded, but his feelings became increasingly clear through small gestures, bringing Diana books he thought she'd enjoy, asking her opinion on his medical papers, walking her home from evening events with conversation that ranged from serious to delightfully absurd. In February, on a rare sunny afternoon, Benjamin asked Diana to walk with him along the River Avon. They strolled in companionable silence for a while before Benjamin spoke, his voice unusually nervous. "Diana, I made an attempt to ask you this at Christmas, but circumstances interrupted. I'd like to try again, if you'll permit me." Diana's heart began to race. "Benjamin, please, let me finish before I lose my courage." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "These past months, knowing you have changed my life. You've challenged my thinking, expanded my perspective, and made me believe that partnership in its truest sense is possible. You're brilliant, compassionate, and brave in ways I admire beyond measure. He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. "I know I can't offer you what you were raised to expect. I'm not wealthy or titled. My work will always take me to difficult places, charity hospitals and poorhouses and anywhere else people need help. The life I lead is not easy or glamorous, but it's meaningful," Diana said softly. "And it matters." "It does," Benjamin agreed. "And I believe it would matter more if you were beside me. Diana, would you consent to be my wife? Would you join me in this work? Be my partner in life and purpose? I promise you intellectual equality, honest partnership, and the freedom to be fully yourself. That's all I can offer, but I offer it with my whole heart." Diana looked at this good, principled man who saw her true worth, who offered her exactly the kind of life she'd never dared imagine. Benjamin would never betray her or disappoint her. He would be steady and kind and respectful always. It was everything rational thought suggested she should want. But even as she opened her mouth to accept, a different face flashed through her mind. Dark eyes burning with intensity, a voice sharp with challenge, the memory of Benedict Ashford's last words echoing in her thoughts. Diana pushed the image away firmly. Benedict was her past, a chapter closed. Benjamin was her future, offering real love and partnership. "Yes," Diana said, squeezing Benjamin's hands. "Yes, I'll marry you." Benjamin's face lit with joy, and he pulled her into an embrace that was both tender and respectful. "You've made me the happiest man in England," he murmured against her hair. "I promise you won't regret this, Diana. I'll spend my life proving worthy of your trust." The engagement was announced quietly among Bath's intellectual circle, met with warm congratulations from those who knew them both. Cordelia wept happy tears and immediately began planning a modest wedding for April. Eleanor presented Diana with a collection of poetry celebrating unconventional love. Mrs. Hartley promised to host a wedding breakfast that would feature only the most progressive, interesting guests. It was perfect. It was everything Diana should want. So why did she feel like something essential was missing? News of Diana's engagement reached London within days, travelling through those social networks that connected Bath's émigrés to the capital's gossip mills. Diana tried not to imagine how Benedict would react to the news, told herself she didn't care, that his opinion no longer mattered. She was therefore completely unprepared when he appeared at Cordelia's door 3 weeks later, travel-worn and urgent, demanding to see her immediately. "Absolutely not," Cordelia said firmly, blocking the doorway. "You've caused my niece enough pain, Your Grace. She's engaged now to a good man who values her properly. Leave her in peace." "Mrs. Blackwood, please," Benedict said, and Diana, listening from the stairs, was shocked by the raw desperation in his voice. "I have information about Edmund, information Diana needs to hear. I wouldn't be here if it weren't urgent." Diana descended the stairs, her heart pounding. "Let him in, Aunt Cordelia." Benedict followed her into the sitting room, and Diana was struck by how different he looked. The cold, controlled Duke had given way to someone more human, dishevelled from hard travel, exhaustion evident in every line of his frame, and something almost frantic in his dark eyes. "Edmund is dead," Benedict said without preamble, and Diana felt the room tilt. "What? How?" "Fever. In a boarding house in Dover. He was trying to book passage to France when he fell ill. He'd been living under an assumed name, working as a clerk." Benedict's voice was hollow. "He left a letter. For you." He handed Diana a sealed envelope, her name written in Edmund's familiar, elegant script. Diana's hands shook as she broke the seal and unfolded the pages. "Dearest Diana, if you're reading this, then I've finally found the courage I lacked in life, the courage to tell the truth even if it comes too late to matter. You saved me that night. I know you did. When you stood in that ballroom and destroyed yourself publicly, you were giving me the chance to run, to escape the consequences of my own weakness and stupidity. I took that chance like the coward I've always been, and I've spent every day since then hating myself for it. I've been living in squalor, working menial jobs, too afraid to contact anyone from my former life. And all the while, I've carried the weight of what you sacrificed for me. You gave up everything, your family, your reputation, your future, to protect me from my own mistakes. And Benedict, Benedict, destroyed you for it, thinking you'd betrayed me when the truth was so much more complicated. I'm writing this because I'm very ill and I don't think I'll recover. Consumption, the doctor says, though I suspect it's more accurate to say I'm dying of shame and regret. But before I go, I need to do one thing right. I need to tell Benedict the truth about what I did and what you did to save me from it. I've enclosed a separate letter for my brother, detailing everything, my gambling debts, the information I sold, the documents I stole. I've explained how you discovered my betrayal and chose to sacrifice yourself rather than expose me. I've told him that you're the bravest, most selfless person I've ever known, and that he owes you a debt our family can never repay. Diana, I'm so sorry. Sorry for being weak, for letting you pay my price, for wasting the second chance you gave me. You deserved so much better than what I put you through. You deserved so much better than me. I hope you found some measure of happiness in Bath. I hope you've built a life worth living. And I hope someday you can forgive me for being the catalyst that destroyed your old life, even as I pray it led you to something better. With eternal gratitude and deepest regret, Edmund Diana read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face. Poor Edmund. Weak, frightened Edmund, who died alone and ashamed in a Dover boarding house. He'd been a coward, yes, but he'd also been kind when they first met, gentle and genuine in his affections. He'd deserved better than the fate that claimed him. I'm sorry, Benedict said quietly. I know you cared for him once. I did, Diana whispered, not as a lover, but as a friend. He wasn't evil, Benedict. He was just not strong enough for the world he was born into. I know. Benedict moved closer, his expression tortured. And I failed him. I was so focused on molding him into the perfect aristocrat that I never saw how desperately he was struggling. I pushed him too hard, expected too much, and when he fell, I wasn't there to catch him. Instead, you caught him. You saved him when his own brother couldn't. You couldn't have known. I should have known, Benedict interrupted fiercely. He was my brother, my responsibility, and when everything fell apart, I blamed you. I used all my power to destroy you, believing you'd betrayed Edmund, when in truth you'd saved him, and me, at devastating cost to yourself. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and pain. Edmund's letter to me laid out everything. What he did, what you did, why you made the choice you made. Diana, you gave up your entire life to protect my family's reputation and give my brother a chance to start over. And I repaid you with cruelty and persecution. You didn't know the truth, Diana said softly. I made sure you couldn't know. That doesn't absolve me, Benedict said. I judged you without evidence, condemned you without trial, and used my influence as a weapon against someone who'd done nothing but try to help. And then, when I finally discovered the truth, I came to Bath and found you'd built a new life, a good life. And I nearly destroyed that too with my guilty conscience and need to fix what I'd broken. He took a step back, as if distance could make what he had to say easier. Dr. Carlyle was right. You deserve peace and happiness, not to be dragged back into the wreckage of my family's failures. So I came to tell you about Edmund, to give you his letter, and to say goodbye properly. I won't interfere with your engagement or your new life. I just wanted you to know that I understand now, fully, what you did and what it cost you, and that I'm sorry for everything. Diana looked at this proud, powerful man standing before her with humility and pain written across his features, and something shifted in her chest. This wasn't the cold, arrogant duke who'd condemned her in London. This was Benedict, stripped of armor and pretense, raw with grief and guilt and something else, something that looked disturbingly like longing. Why did you come yourself? Diana asked quietly. You could have sent Edmund's letter by courier. Why travel all this way to deliver it personally? Benedict's jaw clenched. Because I owed you a proper apology. Because I needed to see for myself that you were happy, that Dr. Carlyle was treating you with the respect and care you deserve. Because... He stopped, seemed to wrestle with himself, then continued with obvious difficulty. "Because I needed to see you one last time before I let you go." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither dared examine too closely. "Benedict, don't," he said quickly. "Don't say anything. You're engaged to a good man who loves you properly. You have the life you deserve here, the intellectual freedom and partnership you were always meant for. I'm happy for you, Diana, truly. And I'm sorry for everything my family put you through." He moved toward the door, and Diana felt panic rise in her throat. He was leaving. He would walk out of this room and out of her life, and she would marry Benjamin and build the rational, meaningful life she'd chosen, and everything would be exactly as it should be, except it wouldn't. Because somewhere in the past months, somewhere between Benedict's initial fury and his later investigation, somewhere in those brief conversations in Bath and that moment of vulnerability in Cordelia's garden, something had shifted. Diana had stopped seeing the cold Duke and started seeing the man beneath, brilliant, driven, carrying the weight of his family and title with fierce dedication. A man who'd made terrible mistakes, but who'd also traveled across England twice to apologize, to make amends, to ensure she was truly happy. A man who'd just admitted, however obliquely, that letting her go was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. "Wait," Diana heard herself say. Benedict stopped, his back to her, tension evident in every line of his body. "I need to ask you something," Diana continued, her heart racing. "And I need you to answer honestly, even if the truth is difficult." "Anything," Benedict said quietly. "That night in London at the ball when I confessed, if you had known then what you know now, if you'd understood what I was really doing, what would you have done?" Benedict turned slowly, his dark eyes meeting hers with devastating intensity. "I would have stopped you. I would have found another way to protect Edmund and the family's reputation. I would have moved heaven and earth to keep you from sacrificing yourself." "Why?" "Because even then, Diana, even when I thought I hated you, some part of me recognized that you were extraordinary. You stood in that ballroom and faced complete destruction with courage I'd never witnessed before. You were magnificent and terrifying and utterly fascinating, and when I discovered the truth," he stopped, seemed to struggle for words. "When I learned what you'd truly done, I realized I'd been blind. You weren't just extraordinary. You were everything I'd never known I was looking for." Diana's breath caught. "Benedict, but I also realized I had no right to you," he continued, words tumbling out now as if a dam had broken. "Not after what I did. Not after I'd used my power to destroy you. Dr. Carlyle is a better man than I am, Diana. He's never hurt you, never judged you unfairly, never made you pay for someone else's crimes. He deserves you. You deserve him. And I have no right to complicate your happiness with feelings I should never have allowed to develop." "Feelings," Diana repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Benedict closed his eyes briefly, as if the admission pained him. "I'm in love with you, Diana. Desperately, hopelessly in love with you, but I'm telling you this as goodbye, not as persuasion. I want you to be happy, even if, especially if, that happiness is with someone else. You owe me nothing, less than nothing. But I couldn't let you marry Dr. Carlyle without knowing that you are loved, truly, deeply loved, exactly as you are." The sitting room was silent, except for the ticking of Cordelia's mantel clock and Diana's ragged breathing. Everything she thought she'd understood about her life, her choices, her future, was suddenly uncertain. "I need time," Diana said finally. "I need to think, of course." Benedict's expression was carefully neutral now, armor sliding back into place. "I'm staying at the York House Hotel. I'll remain in Bath for 2 more days, in case you wish to speak with me again. After that, I'll return to London and trouble you no more." He bowed formally and left, and Diana stood frozen in Cordelia's sitting room, Edmund's letter clutched in one hand and her entire world tilted on its axis. Cordelia appeared moments later, having clearly been listening from the hall. "Well," she said mildly, "that was unexpected." "He loves me," Diana said, still stunned. "Benedict loves me. Yes, dear, That's been obvious to everyone except apparently you and him. Cordelia guided Diana to a chair. The question is, how do you feel about him? I don't know, Diana admitted. Benjamin is good and kind and offers me everything I thought I wanted. We're compatible in every rational way. Marrying him makes sense. And when has love ever made sense? Cordelia asked gently. Diana, I've watched you these past months with Dr. Carlyle. You're content with him, respectful, intellectually engaged. But you don't light up the way you do when Benedict Ashford is near. Even when you're arguing with him or trying to ignore him, there's an intensity, a passion, an aliveness I've never seen in you otherwise. But Benedict destroyed me, Diana protested weakly. He used his power against me cruelly. He did, Cordelia agreed. And he spent months trying to make amends, investigating the truth, traveling to Bath repeatedly to ensure your well-being. He's been wrong, Diana, but he's also been willing to recognize his mistakes and try to rectify them. That takes a different kind of courage. What about Benjamin? He's offered me everything. He trusts me, respects me, and he deserves honesty. Cordelia finished. Diana, if you marry Dr. Carlyle while in love with another man, you'll be doing exactly what you were supposed to do with Edmund, settling for a good, safe choice instead of following your heart. Is that really the freedom you sacrificed everything to gain? Diana spent the night staring at her ceiling, Edmund's letter and Benedict's confession turning over and over in her mind. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She found Benjamin at the charity hospital, where he was examining a young patient with obvious tenderness and skill. Watching him work, Diana felt her heart clench with affection and regret. He was truly good, truly admirable, and he deserved someone who loved him without reservation. She waited until he'd finished, then asked to walk with him privately. Benjamin took one look at her face and seemed to understand immediately. It's the Duke, isn't it? He said quietly. I'm so sorry, Benjamin. You deserve better than this. I deserve honesty, Benjamin interrupted gently, which is what you're giving me now. Diana, I've known since the moment Ashford appeared in Bath that there was something between you two. Something intense and complicated and unfinished. I hoped it was only anger or resentment, something that would fade given time. But it's more than that, isn't it? I don't know, Diana admitted, but I can't marry you while uncertain. You deserve someone whose whole heart is yours, without shadows or complications. That's not me, Benjamin. I wish it were, but it's not. Benjamin was quiet for a long moment, pain evident in his expression. But when he spoke, his voice was kind. I'm disappointed, of course. I'd hoped we might build something lasting together. But Diana, I want you to be happy more than I want you to be mine. If the Duke makes you happy, truly happy, then I can accept losing you to him. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Don't settle, Benjamin said firmly. Not for Ashford, not for anyone. You sacrificed everything once for someone else's sake. This time, make sure whatever choice you make is truly for yourself. Make sure you're choosing the life and the love you genuinely want, not the one you think you should want, or the one that seems to make the most sense. Promise me that. I promise, Diana said, tears streaming down her face. Benjamin, thank you for everything. For seeing me, for respecting me, for offering me a future I never thought possible. You're a remarkable man, and you'll find someone who appreciates that fully. Perhaps, Benjamin said with a sad smile, but she'll have rather large shoes to fill. They parted as friends, and Diana walked to the York House Hotel with her heart pounding and her future uncertain. Benedict received her in the hotel's small private parlour, his expression carefully guarded. I've ended my engagement, Diana said without preamble. Benedict's eyes widened. Diana, if you did that because of what I said. I did it because I realized I was about to make the same mistake I almost made with Edmund, choosing safety and logic over truth. Benjamin is wonderful, but I don't love him the way he deserves. And I realized, somewhere in the chaos of these past months, that I've fallen in love with you. You have? Benedict's voice was rough with emotion. Against all reason and wisdom, yes. You're arrogant and controlling, and you made terrible judgments about me. You destroyed my reputation and nearly ruined my life. By every rational measure, I should hate you." "Then why don't you?" Benedict asked, moving closer. "Because I've seen who you really are beneath the cold Duke facade," Diana answered. "You're a man who carries impossible burdens with dedication and strength. You made mistakes, but you had the courage to admit them and try to make amends. You investigated the truth even when it was easier to let the scandal lie. You've traveled to Bath 3 times now, each time putting my well-being ahead of your pride or convenience. And when you thought I was happy with Benjamin, you were willing to walk away rather than complicate my life, even though it clearly cost you." She stepped closer, lifting her eyes to his. "You're not perfect, Benedict, but you're real and passionate. And when you look at me, I don't feel like an ornament or a duty. I feel like someone worthy of being truly seen and truly known. That's why I love you, even though it makes no logical sense at all." Benedict pulled her into his arms then, holding her as if she might disappear. "Diana," he breathed against her hair, "I don't deserve you. I don't deserve your forgiveness or your love, but I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life earning them. I'll use every ounce of my power and influence not to destroy, but to protect, to support, to help you become everything you're meant to be. I'll challenge you and respect you and love you exactly as you are." "That's all I've ever wanted," Diana whispered. Benedict pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his dark eyes blazing with emotion. "Then marry me. Not because of duty or scandal or social expectations, but because we're equals who see each other clearly and choose each other anyway. Marry me, Diana, and let me spend our lives proving that the most magnificent thing my family ever produced was the courage of the woman who saved us." "Yes," Diana said, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Yes, I'll marry you, Benedict Ashford." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the chaste affection Benjamin had offered. It was fire and passion and promise, the kiss of equals who'd fought their way to understanding and chosen love over logic. When they finally parted, both breathless, Benedict smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression Diana had never seen before. "London society is going to have a collective apoplexy when we announce this." "Good," Diana said firmly. "Let them talk. I've learned I'm quite good at surviving scandal." "We'll weather it together this time," Benedict promised. "No more sacrificing yourself alone. From now on, we face everything as partners." And in that moment, Diana knew she'd finally found what she'd been searching for, not just love, but genuine partnership with someone who matched her strength for strength and saw her sacrifice not as scandal, but as the courageous act it truly was. The wedding took place in June, at the Ashford country estate in Hampshire. It was a smaller affair than Diana's first planned wedding, no vast crowds of London society, but instead a carefully chosen gathering of people who genuinely mattered. Cordelia wept throughout the ceremony. Eleanor served as Diana's attendant, fierce and proud. Even Benjamin Carlyle attended, having accepted Benedict's personal invitation with grace. The scandal, as predicted, was enormous. London society simply couldn't comprehend the Duke of Ashford marrying the very woman he'd destroyed months earlier. Speculation ran rampant. Some said Benedict had been the mysterious lover all along. Others whispered that Diana had somehow ensnared the Duke with manipulation or blackmail. Still others suggested both had gone mad. Benedict's response was to submit a detailed account to the Times, explaining the full truth of Edmund's betrayal, Diana's sacrifice, and his own terrible misjudgment. He owned his mistakes publicly, praised Diana's courage explicitly, and made clear that their marriage was based on genuine love and respect. The letter caused its own scandal, but it also slowly shifted opinion, particularly among those who valued honor and sacrifice over social performance. Diana became the Duchess of Ashford, a role she approached with the same intelligence and courage she'd shown throughout her ordeal. She refused to simply ornament Benedict's arm at social functions, instead using her position to advocate for causes she'd discovered in Bath: education reform, medical advancement, women's intellectual opportunities. She established a salon at Ashford House in London, inviting scholars, reformers, and progressive thinkers, regardless of their social status. Benjamin Carlyle became a regular attendee, presenting his medical research and finding wealthy patrons for his charity hospital work. Eleanor Finch opened a London branch of her bookshop with Diana's financial backing. Mrs. Hartley finally published a novel under her own name, with the Duchess of Ashford listed as its patron. Benedict watched his wife's transformation of his household with pride and amazement. Diana brought life and purpose to spaces that had been all cold duty. She challenged him constantly, arguing politics and philosophy with a sharpness that kept him intellectually engaged. And she loved him with a passion that still took his breath away, this magnificent woman who'd chosen him despite every reason not to. Their marriage wasn't always easy. Benedict could still be arrogant and controlling, habits formed by years of absolute authority. Diana could be stubborn and independent, refusing to bend simply because tradition demanded it. They argued regularly and fiercely, their battles of will and wit legendary among those who knew them. But they also laughed together, worked together, and built a partnership that redefined what an aristocratic marriage could be. Benedict began supporting Diana's reform efforts actively, using his political influence to advance causes they both believed in. Diana learned to navigate the complex social and political world Benedict inhabited, becoming his most trusted advisor and fiercest defender. 6 months after their wedding, they traveled to Bath for the winter season. Diana wanted to show Benedict the world she'd built during her exile, to introduce him properly to the people who'd saved her when she had nothing. They attended a lecture at the literary institution, where Diana was greeted with warmth and congratulations. After the presentation, they took tea with Cordelia, Eleanor, and Benjamin Carlyle in a cozy tea shop overlooking the Roman baths. "You're happy," Cordelia observed, studying Diana with satisfaction. "Truly happy." "I am," Diana confirmed, glancing at Benedict beside her. "I never imagined happiness could look like this, challenging and passionate and sometimes frustrating, but always real and honest." "That's because you stopped letting others define your path," Eleanor said. "You chose this life, this man, this purpose. That makes all the difference." "I learned that here," Diana said warmly, "in Bath, with all of you. You taught me that I could be more than what I was raised to be, that my mind and my courage mattered more than my reputation or my family connections. Everything I have now, everything Benedict and I have built together, started with the freedom you helped me discover." Benedict raised his teacup in salute. "I owe you all a debt I can never repay. You sheltered Diana when I destroyed her. You helped her become the extraordinary woman who somehow forgave me and agreed to marry me. You have my eternal gratitude." "We'll settle for an invitation to visit Ashford House next season," Eleanor said with a grin. "I want to see this famous salon everyone's talking about." "Consider it standing invitation," Benedict replied. "Diana's salon welcomes anyone with intelligence and passion, regardless of conventional qualifications. You'd fit perfectly." As they walked back to Cordelia's townhouse later, Diana and Benedict strolled along the River Avon in the fading light. Benedict pulled Diana close, kissing her temple gently. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "The scandal, the sacrifice, everything you gave up?" Diana considered the question seriously. "I regret Edmund's death. I regret that he died alone and ashamed, never finding the peace he deserved. I regret the pain my family experienced, even if they caused much of it themselves through rigidity and unreasonable expectations." She paused, looking up at Benedict. "But I don't regret the scandal itself. It forced me out of a life that was slowly suffocating me. It brought me to Bath, where I discovered I could be more than an aristocratic ornament. And eventually, it brought me to you, the real you. Not the cold duke everyone sees, but the passionate, dedicated man beneath. So no, I don't regret it. Everything I lost was worth everything I gained." "You're remarkable," Benedict said, his voice rough with emotion. "I fall more in love with you every day. which I didn't think was possible. Good, Diana replied with a smile. Because you're rather stuck with me now, Your Grace, for better or worse, in scandal and in triumph, until death parts us. I can think of no better fate, Benedict murmured, kissing her properly this time, right there on the public street, not caring who might see or gossip. In the months and years that followed, the Duke and Duchess of Ashford became known not for scandal, but for partnership. They championed reforms together, hosted intellectuals and artists regardless of social standing, and proved that aristocratic marriage could be based on genuine love and equality, rather than merely duty and alliance. Diana never returned to the passive, decorative role she'd been raised for. Instead, she used her position as Duchess to amplify voices that would otherwise go unheard, to support causes that mattered, to live with purpose and passion. And Benedict supported her in everything, his initial arrogance transformed into genuine respect for his wife's intelligence and courage. They had children eventually, 3 daughters and a son, and raised them in an atmosphere of intellectual curiosity and genuine affection that was revolutionary in aristocratic circles. Their children grew up seeing their mother as their father's equal partner, their parents' love as something chosen and earned, rather than arranged and endured. And sometimes, on quiet evenings at Ashford House, Benedict would find Diana in the library, reading by firelight, and he would remember the woman who'd stood in a ballroom and destroyed herself to save his family. He'd remember his own blind fury and terrible judgment, and he'd give thanks for the second chance he'd never deserved, for the magnificent woman who'd forgiven him, and for the love they'd built from the ashes of scandal and sacrifice. Diana would look up, catch him watching, and smile, that knowing, intimate smile that was his alone. And Benedict would cross the room to take her in his arms, still amazed after all these years that she'd chosen him, still determined every day to prove worthy of that choice. They had bloomed where they were planted, not in the rigid, prescribed garden of London society's expectations, but in the wild, passionate, genuine partnership they'd created together. And that garden, cultivated with love and respect and fierce dedication to each other's flourishing, proved to be more beautiful than anything either had imagined possible. Some sacrifices, Diana learned, led not to destruction but to transformation. Some scandals cleared away what was false to make room for what was true. And some love stories began not with courtship and romance, but with rage and ruin, only to become something stronger and more genuine because they'd been tested by fire and chosen anyway. The Duke had destroyed her in vengeance, never knowing she'd sacrificed herself for his brother. But from that destruction had risen something neither expected, not just redemption, but genuine love. The kind of love that saw clearly, forgave honestly, and chose courageously to build something new from the wreckage of what had been. And that, Diana often thought in the years that followed, was the truest kind of happy ending. Not perfection, but transformation. Not ease, but meaning. Not the life she'd been promised, but the life she'd chosen and made her own. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear which moment touched your heart the most, and whether you believed in second chances and redemption as much as Diana and Benedict learned to. Thank you for listening, and until the next story, may you always have the courage to choose love over fear.